Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to a project today by Samson Young, who's an experimental music and sound composer that's based in Hong Kong. And the project that I'm going to talk to you about today is called Nocturne, which was completed in 2015. So Nocturne is a sound performance that uses videos of night bombings found on YouTube, which is to say bombings during war. The videos were then edited together and their sound was removed. What you'll see in the video, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, is the performer or the musician, which is the artist Samson Young, watching the silent video that he produced of these night bombings on a monitor. As he watches the video, he attempts to recreate the soundtrack of the explosions, the gunshots, and the debris, the various sounds that you might hear in this footage from war. You'll recognize in the video that the artist is using many common instruments, drums and microphones and electronics, things like that, things you would expect to see. But you'll also notice a lot of everyday objects that he's using to make sounds. You'll see that he's using cornflakes and an electric shaver and glass bottles and tea leaves, so a lot of different stuff that you might find around the house. As he's performing, the audio that he's producing is then transmitted on an FM transmitter, which is to say just like a common radio that you would listen to in the car. So what you'll hear in the video is the radio broadcast that visitors could listen to by picking up a radio as they walk into the gallery. So let's have a look at the video that Young produced and think about this also as a form of documentation. And then I'll point out a few things after you've watched. All right, so again, that was Samson Young's Nocturne, or documentation of Samson Young's performance Nocturne. And there are a few things that I hope that you picked up on. One would be to consider how the stories we hear are mediated. So whether we hear them from a friend or on the news or on YouTube or wherever, and I would suggest that by transparently producing the sounds himself, he brings attention to this mediation by kind of disassociating what we hear and what we see. In other words, you might say he's asking us to reconsider trusting what we see and what we hear as being true. I also hoped you noticed Young's use of everyday objects. There might be two things to point out here. One, he's associating the domestic sphere with the military sphere, which is to say spaces that are being bombed. And he's doing that by just bringing in common everyday objects of the home and associating them directly with exterior objects of the political sphere, which is to say spaces being bombed. The second is less conceptual and more practical, which is that I hope you noticed that he was really creative in how he produced sounds. Producing kind of interesting audio isn't necessarily limited to having fancy equipment or fancy audio, which is certainly where most of you probably are. And finally, with regard to the content for your audio postcard, I would just point out one thing. One is that I hope Young has kind of prompted you to think about how you might be really inventive and how you can produce audio. Could your postcard be from an imagined space, perhaps, not necessarily a sad or devastating place like a war landscape, but imagined nonetheless? And if it is imagined, how could you produce the sounds that characterize that space? So I'll leave it there for now. Samson Young's project is linked below, and thanks very much.